Alright, filming this back to back with the last video I did, the 10 years later video. I needed to take a quick break to charge this camera and clear my throat a little bit, but we're back. This was an idea that I had for a video for a while now, and quite a few people told me that, yeah, this sounded like a good idea. Obviously, you guys know I love gaming, and people have asked me if I have thought of doing game reviews, but I don't know if I ever like the idea of doing them in the short form style or in a long form style, at least consistently. So I thought this would be a good little middle point where I'd be able to do something where it's not too long but not too short and talk about video games, and this is my first time trying it out, and I guess we'll see how it goes. So, welcome back to I Want to Talk About, the series where I take a topic, I sit on camera, and I blabber about it. And as you can tell from the title, today, I'm not going to be putting a picture up here right now. There's going to be pictures throughout the video, but I'm not going to do one right now because there's nothing really I could put up here, so just don't be alarmed if I don't do this. But as you can tell from the title, I want to talk about my favorite video games of 2023. Now, before I get deep in the video, I do want to say this. I have been contemplating doing a video like this for previous years, like the other years of the 2020s, the 2010s, and maybe even the 2000s. Just go through some of my favorite games of those years as well. Just because, after all, given that I had a lot of content droughts this year as far as long-form content, doing something like that consistently might help get some content on the channel, and it would be fun. I think that these videos would be really interesting, and hopefully you guys would enjoy them. If you guys would like to see that, let me know in the comments below. Again, I'm still thinking about if I want to do that, but if you guys are interested, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I just wanted to get that out there now. Anyway, 2023, the past year has been nuts. On a personal level, it's just been nuts. But in the video game world, well, it's also probably been nuts if you're a game developer, because, yeah, unfortunately, way too many layoffs that we've had to deal with this year. Conditions in the industry are pretty rough, unfortunately, and I think it's something that needs to be called out. I think it's weird that I, as a YouTuber with 600-something subscribers, is saying more about this than Jeff Keighley did at the Game Awards. Just wanted to get that out there. But at risk of an awkward transition, 2023, as far as video game releases, you've been hearing it from a lot of different people, but this year was fantastic as far as new game releases, and wildly unexpected. Like, a lot of big surprises to come this year, just like any year in gaming. I mean, this is the one year that I tried to make a bingo card, and it clearly, I might have just been wasting my time, honestly. Like, there might not have been much of a point in doing that, because gaming is such a hard thing to predict. But it didn't matter what kind of predictions I got right or wrong. This year was awesome. It felt like every single month there were like 5 to 6 new releases that were so exciting to look forward to. So many high-quality games in recognizable franchises, new IPs, blah, blah, blah. Like, just so many good games to look forward to, so many exciting games to play. It was just a fun year to be a gamer with how many exciting, awesome titles were coming out from so many different studios and so many different publishers and developers. And I think it's worth it to celebrate those games, and I want to do that and celebrate some games that I really, really enjoyed this year. Now, this video was initially going to be a little bit longer than what it will end up being, because I initially had a plan to discuss some games that I didn't play this year, just to give you guys an idea, in case you guys were like, oh, I don't know, where was this game, where's that, you didn't play this game, blah, 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 like you didn't include this game. The thing is, I do play a lot of the new releases, but sometimes I don't. Either because lack of interest or just coming out at the wrong time, things like that. And the list of games that I didn't play still proved to be pretty long. As much as this list you're about to see me give you guys is going to be relatively long, the list of stuff I didn't play was also long. So if there is a certain game that is not on either of these lists, assume I either didn't play it, dropped it, or didn't like it enough to put it on the list. Yes, that's 3 different assumptions you can make, and you'll never know the right answer. Unless you just ask me in the comments. I mean, I'll respond. I'll let you know if I played it or not. It's not that big a deal. But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that if there are certain games that don't show up on either of these lists, well, there's a lot of assumptions you can make as to why, but you can just comment. You can just ask me, like, did you play blah, 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 and I'll let you know if I played it or not or what I thought of it. And I will also let you guys down gently a little bit real quick, because I know this is inevitably going to be brought up, especially with how big of a game it was this year, but just to nip this in the bud, no, I did not play Baldur's Gate 3 this year. I know it was the game of the year for a lot of people. It just didn't seem like something I personally would be that interested in, but huge respect to it, because for Larian to develop this game as long as they did without a publisher, and the way that they worked so hard on it, and the way that it really raised the bar for games in general, and had other developers even like questioning their own games and things like that. It got other developers kind of like, for lack of a better word, scared that they maybe weren't doing enough with their games or something like that, at least from what I was seeing on like Twitter. For them to raise the bar in the way they did with this game, I think is incredible. And even if I didn't play the game, I can respect that a lot. So kudos to Larian on Baldur's Gate 3. I didn't play it myself, but respect to them and on the success they achieved with this. Because if you asked me in July or August if anything was beating a particular game we'll get to on this list for a Game of the Year, I probably would have said nah. But the fact that this one managed to win Game of the Year and is going to continue to win many other Game of the Year awards, I think is incredible. So kudos to Larian on this one, even if I didn't play it myself. So yeah, that's the one snub I just wanted to address because I know it's one of the biggest games of this year and a lot of people are going to be asking about it, so just wanted to get that one out of the way. And now to talk about the games that I did play and really enjoyed. Now, there are technically two separate lists I'm going to be doing in this video. So, unlike music, which, you know, I grade on the scale of excellent, great, good, okay, bad, awful, blah, blah, blah. When I play a game, I do rate it on a scale of 0 to 10. Yes, I do count 0 if the game is that bad. And for me, an 8 out of 10 is basically like the cutoff point to say that a game is great. 7 is good, 8 is great, and then 9 and 10 are just, you know, other ways of saying a game is amazing. So, I have two lists in that regard. I have the honorable mentions, which are all the games that I gave an 8 or a 9 to, and then my proper best of list, because I do give out a few more 10 out of 10s than maybe other critics do. That's not out of being easy to please, it's just if I really, really like something, I will say that I really, really like it. So I'm going to present the honorable mentions in pretty much like release date order, and then the proper best list will be in order of number whatever to number 1. As I said, to have made the honorable mentions, you have to be a game that I played this year that I gave at least an 8 or a 9 to. Just to give a couple games that missed the cut because I gave them a 7. Horizon Call of the Mountain was one of them. Pretty good game, but I think it could have done a couple things better. Disney Illusion Island, cute game, but not the most special thing I played this year. And Sonic Superstars, which I had fun with even though it was rough. Other than that, all the games here are games that I enjoyed to the point where I thought they were at least like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. So let's get into some of those great games before we get into the cream of the crop, my personal favorite games of this year. And there's going to be a lot here, so if I rapid fire through some games, I'm sorry. I'd love to spend hours waxing poetic about these games, but I got a lot to talk about. So let's get through the honorable mentions. Maybe I might, if I do this for other years, I might call it something other than honorable mentions, but let's jump into the 8s and 9s out of 10s on my scale. Might be a surprise to start off with, but SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake was actually quite a fun game. I personally wasn't really that big into the movie game that a lot of people loved back in the day. I have some nostalgia for it, but I don't love the game. But this, for me, was like the sequel to Battle for Bikini Bottom that I had been hoping for a while. There were enough smart gameplay improvements, and there was that trademark SpongeBob charm to this one to make it a real winner. I still think that Battle for Bikini Bottom is the better game, especially rehydrated, but I think this is still a fun game on its own, and I was really happy with how Purple Lamp handled this one. Now, I just want THQ Nordic to do some Nickelodeon games that aren't SpongeBob. They promised that. They said we were going to get more of them, so I really hope we get them soon. But in the meantime, this is a pretty fun game, and I definitely recommend it. It might have gone a little underrated because of all the big games coming out this year, but on a small scale, it's really fun, and I think you should give it a shot. I will not refrain from talking about remakes or remasters. Again, even my best of list has 1 or 2, and just games in general that were re-released that maybe I finally got to experience this year. And this isn't one that I experienced for the first time, but Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe was a pleasant surprise. When this first got announced, I didn't initially think like, oh my god, I really want a Return to Dreamland remaster. But this is, the original Return to Dreamland is one of my personal favorite Kirby games, and this is a fantastic recreation of it. It retains all that same fun gameplay, but with some of the new modes and some of the new things that they added to the game, it almost feels like a whole new game. And I think that's pretty crazy. I think that speaks volumes to the amount of effort and care that went into this. I think there were obviously some questions about like, is this necessary? Do we need a re-release of Return to Dreamland? But whether we needed it or not, they really went the extra mile with it. And even though Kirby had a pretty fantastic 3D transition last year with Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I'm really glad to see that 2D Kirby still got a chance to shine, because this game feels like a love letter to all things 2D Kirby. And it's a really fun game. Definitely highly recommend this one. Here's one I know a lot of you guys love. As someone who honestly couldn't get into Resident Evil 4 when I first played it, just because I'm a natural-born hater of tank controls or anything that resembled tank controls, having a new version of RE4 that doesn't have such controls was great, because it not only helped me to actually play the game and enjoy it, but it helped me to appreciate this a lot more, and it helped me to see what made the original Resident Evil 4 such a special, amazing title in the first place. I also really appreciate that Capcom made some great, smart changes to this one compared to the original game that kind of help it strike that perfect balance between being faithful to the original, but also trying out something a little bit new. And they really did a mop-up job with it, I would say. I still prefer the RE2 remake as well as RE7 and 8 over this one, but this is still very much a great game that I can definitely recommend. And now that PlayStation VR 2 update is out for it, I definitely got to try that out, because of all the Resident Evil games, I feel like this is probably the one I can actually handle in VR without wanting to shit myself. Sorry for that imagery, just had to say it. I know, sports games, and yeah, thanks to Game Pass, I couldn't resist the urge to dump another 200 or so hours into a yearly MLB The Show game, because quite frankly, I mean, call me a biased baseball fan, but I think MLB The Show is probably the best sports game out there as far as not being scummy. And again, the fact that these show up on Game Pass is nice for me. It means I don't have to spend $70 a year on them. And even if the progression in certain things were a little rough at different points, I actually really enjoyed that MLB The Show's Diamond Dynasty programs were a little more streamlined this time around, because it gave me more motivation to want to play them. And yeah, it ultimately ended up being a pretty fun time. I always tell myself I'm gonna kick the MLB The Show addiction, and I don't. Granted, I have, because I haven't played in months. I finally was able to delete the game, but you know what I mean. Like, every year I'm like, I still end up playing it. But that's what Game Pass does. Game Pass just gives you the chance to try out something, and the fact that these show up on Game Pass is pretty solid. And ultimately, yeah, this was the most fun that I had with MLB The Show in a pretty long time. Okay, this right here is the happiest that I've ever been and ever will be to have had an April Fool's prank pulled on me. The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, if you don't know, was basically a visual novel Sonic game that was released on April Fool's Day. I believe it was largely headed by some people from Sonic's social media team, or they had a big involvement or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but what I do know is this game is absolutely precious. They went kind of memey, of course, full memey I'd even say, but I love how creative and unique they got, going the extra mile with a Sonic visual novel of all things, and it was incredibly fun. It was really cool, and I love how they respected the lore and lineage of Sonic so much. They had all these weird little Easter eggs and references and things like that, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I laughed my ass off at things like Omo Chow committing medical malpractice or something like that. There was a point in the game where they say that Omo Chow committed medical malpractice, and I just thought that was freaking hilarious. This was really fun, and I would love to see them do more of these weird genre offshoots with Sonic, like, I don't know, a Sonic rhythm game or something like that, a weird Sonic puzzle game. Release that Sonic skateboarding game that got canceled, Sonic the Hedgehog Extreme, do that shit, I don't know, just... I want to see them be weird with Sonic. I do enjoy the platformer games, but I'd love to see them be a little weird. But even if they don't, even if this is just a one-off, I'm very glad it exists, because it's really charming and really fun. Had this game performed a bit better as far as frame rate, of course, I'd have easily given it a 10 and put it on my list proper. But unfortunately, yeah, there were some problems as far as frame rate is concerned. It wasn't as bad for me. I didn't feel like I was chugga-chugga-choo-choo the whole time, but I did notice frame dropping, and it was a little distracting. Be that as it may, Star Wars Jedi Survivor is a great game, and a huge improvement on a game that I felt was already pretty fantastic. A lot of new improvements that are really fun, specifically with the combat. I especially love the whole lightsaber blaster combo thing. And even I, as a non-fan of Star Wars, I nerded out at some of the really tiny details and odes that they added in here. I won't spoil them necessarily, but there were cool things that made me go, oh, that's pretty neat. Even as someone who doesn't care about Star Wars, doesn't really like Star Wars that much. Not that I think it's bad, I just, I'm kind of tired of hearing about it. The fan base can be toxic and all that stuff. But I really appreciate what they did here. And I mean, it's just another game that proves to me how good of a developer Respawn really is. Even though they refuse to give me Titanfall 3. But hey, at least these Star Wars games have been really good. And I'm hearing that they're developing a Star Wars FPS game, which honestly, Respawn, FPS, and Star Wars all sounds like a match made in heaven. So I'm very excited to see where that goes. But until then, Jedi Survivor is amazing. While I had some issues with Street Fighter VI's World Tour mode with the overly grindy nature of it, and I think the mode could have benefited from some kind of difficulty options. Not that they were needed, just that they would have been kind of nice. I think that World Tour was an interesting experiment that can be expanded on in the future, and I would be interested to see how they can expand on it. But more than that, this is a mechanically phenomenal fighting game that feels really accessible for both newcomers and longtime hardcore veterans to the franchise. And I'm really happy with how it turned out because in a year of games that were releasing in buggy states with poor performance and things like that, it was nice that right away a game like this came along and it was so polished. And after the disaster that was Street Fighter V's launch and how minimal content it had, it was nice that this game launched with so much content right out of the box, and good content at that. I mean, World Tour might have disappointed me, yes, but I won't let that get in the way. This is a great fighting game, and I definitely highly recommend it if you haven't played it already. Chances are you have. I'm pretty sure it's one of the bigger selling games of this year. But yeah, it's a really, really great game. I just hope that with the inevitable next game that the World Tour mode gets expanded on or improved upon. It was a nice experiment that I think could be improved on, but whether or not it is or isn't, the pure fighting game here is fantastic. Kudos to Capcom because they have been doing some really, really good work lately. Like I said, I will be putting a few re-releases here, and there are a couple more that are going to be on this list, and this one I wanted to talk about, Pikmin 1+2, because yeah, it might be a touch bare bones, and they probably could have added a little bit more or done a little more with it. But on a personal level, I'm so glad I got to have something like this in 2023. I've mentioned this before, but my first experience with Pikmin 1 was with the Wii re-release, and I could never get accustomed to the Wii controls. I wasn't really fond of them, I just was struggling with them the whole time, so having a version that I could play on a modern console with a standard control scheme was perfect. And it finally helped me to appreciate the original Pikmin in a much greater way because it is a pretty damn fantastic game. I still greatly prefer Pikmin 1 to Pikmin 2. Pikmin 2 is a good game, but there are some issues that I have with it. But either way, I think this is a nice set of games to have on the Switch. It's a nice collection, and I think it is pretty cool that the entire Pikmin series is on one console now, and that you can get them all on the Switch. And it's a great series, so I highly recommend giving it a look if you haven't already. And trust me, I'll have more to say about Pikmin in just a little bit. As someone who wasn't really that crazy about Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 16 felt like it improved on a lot of what I didn't like about that game, and I was very happy about that. Notably, they improved the combat a lot, I was very happy about that. And they condensed the world down a bit to where it's not really an open world this time around, which was nice. It did drag at some points, and yes, I was a bit surprised at some of the performance issues here and there, but it still proved quite fun, although this was one of the year's more polarizing games. Many of you probably already know this, and it's been a big debate topic, but Final Fantasy 16 is far more of an action game than an RPG, to the point where some people say it doesn't even feel like an RPG anymore. And yes, 15 was a bit of a move away from that, but 16 is even more so, because if Final Fantasy 15 was like Kingdom Hearts, this game is more like Devil May Cry. And I personally don't mind that because this was the first mainline Final Fantasy game that I've beaten outside of a FF7 remake and the Crisis Core reunion. This was the first one that I beat at launch because the only ones that I've played are FF7 remake, 15, 16, and then the Crisis Core reunion. And I don't mind that it's like DMC because I love DMC, so I don't mind that it has that kind of combat, but I know for some people that's going to be a bit of a problem because more people would prefer that they do RPG style stuff than turn Final Fantasy into an action game, which is fair. I don't blame anyone. I just wanted to let that be known because if you haven't played the game yet, just know that going in that it does change things up a lot, and some people might not be that crazy about it. For me, I enjoyed it. I was pretty happy with how it turned out, and I do definitely recommend it if you're willing to meet that change of gameplay in the middle. Overall, I enjoyed it, and I can't wait for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, even if that's a totally different game than this. Obviously, no. Twisted Metal 1 and 2 ending up on PS Plus is not necessarily a new release or even a remaster in any way, it's just a reissue. But I kinda just wanted to bring this up because thanks to these games ending up on the PS5 store, this was my first time actually getting to play the OG Twisted Metal games, and these games are dumb. They are stupid, they are ridiculous, and I don't want it any other way. They're definitely a bit janky to go back to, yes, but it's dumb fun of the highest order, and I'm very much okay with that. I definitely prefer Twisted Metal 2 to Twisted Metal 1, but I am happy both games are available on the PlayStation Store and through PS Plus now, so that meant I finally got to experience them, and I think they're still worth playing. Hey, what if we got a new one of these days? I mean, the TV show seems to be doing well, so hey, why not? Speaking of Pikmin, here's Pikmin. Yes, it might have taken 8 years to get Pikmin 4, given that it was announced in 2015, but I'm glad it's here, and I can say it's probably my new favorite in the series. It owes a lot of its structure to Pikmin 2, which kinda did worry me at first because Pikmin 2 is my least favorite in the series, but with this game it feels like they took what they were trying to do with Pikmin 2 and just did it a lot better. It's much easier and more accessible to get into this time around, and I do appreciate that it's much more approachable despite not having an easy mode like Pikmin 3 Deluxe had. Oatchi is also a very good boy. I just have to mention that because Oatchi. But yeah, this is a really great game, and amongst the many fantastic Nintendo games that we got this year, I'm glad that Pikmin 4 had a lot of success. I saw some people that were even saying that this was their own game of the year, and I'm very happy about that because I know that people had to wait a very long time for this one. Again, in 2015, Miyamoto had said the next Pikmin game was close to completion, and it didn't come out until 2023, so I get it, that's quite a long wait. But I'm glad we finally got it, and I'm even more glad that it's a great game. Quake II got a remaster this year, and it is by far one of the greatest remasters I've ever gotten to experience. As a game, to me, it's already impressive how much Quake II was able to improve on the first game and innovate so much, despite it being a game that came out just a year after the first one. But Night Dive's work, as far as remastering the game, is pretty much the gold standard in my eyes of how to remaster a game. I wrote an article about this for my job that Night Dive Studios actually noticed on Twitter, and they posted about it, shout out to Night Dive. But beyond the visual enhancements and improvements to the game, Night Dive released a remaster that included the base game, all the expansions, all the levels from the Nintendo 64 version, and a full-blown new expansion, like a full comprehensive collection of anything and everything Quake 2 for only $10. $10 frickin' dollars. And it's also available on Game Pass, and you can upgrade to it for free on Steam if you already own the game, so you don't even have to double dip for it. Meanwhile, Rockstar wanted to charge $50 for a bare bones Red Dead Redemption 1 port this year. Yeah, save your money and give it to developers that actually care about preserving older games. Genuinely, the work that Night Dive did with this remaster, and the work that seems like they do with a lot of their remasters, is unbelievable. It's really incredible, and shout out to Night Dive Studios for not only preserving these classic games, but doing so in a way that's incredibly faithful and respectful to them. Quake 2 is by far one of the best examples I can think of. As someone who's a little more into Mortal Kombat than Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat 1 was a game I was really looking forward to, and I greatly enjoyed it. Especially after how much Mortal Kombat 11 slowed down the combat, I was really happy to see how the gameplay felt like a happy medium between MK11 and MKX, and that made it a lot more fun to me to play. Not that I didn't like MK11, but it made this one even more fun and enjoyable. In its short campaign, which I don't mind because I don't mind a short game, it was a lot of fun. I've gotten longevity out of it in multiplayer with my friends, and I think it's a very enjoyable game. It is annoying seeing the nickel and diming practice eke their way back in because WB Games is really dumb, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these decisions that NetherRealm had to make were not even their own, but were WB's. But even then, it's still a great game, and I highly recommend you give it a shot. This one I might talk about for a little bit, because this is one of those rare situations that actually happens more than you might think, but a rare moment where I rated a game an 8 out of 10, and still kind of felt disappointed. I think I joked that this is probably the greatest video game that I've ever been disappointed in my life. And I know that sounds weird, because Alan Wake 2 has gotten roundabout praise. Many people have even said it's their own game of the year. And I'm very happy about that, especially given how long the wait was. 12 years between Alan Wake 1 and Alan Wake 2. Actually 13, I miscounted. 13 years. I understand why people loved it so much. But for me, something felt a little off about the game. And I think it's the fact that Alan Wake 1 is one of my all-time favorite games. I love Alan Wake 1. I played it when the remaster came out, and I thought it was fantastic. And Alan Wake 2, for lack of a better way of putting it, felt a little less gamey to me. It was incredibly creative, and I thought the writing was extremely detailed and layered and fantastic. But as a game, it didn't quite feel the same. Not talking the same as far as gameplay, I'm talking it didn't feel as much like a game. I wrote it here in my script, and I've said this a couple times, but at times while playing Alan Wake 2, I kind of felt like I was playing someone's art project, and it was a great art project, but an art project nonetheless. I was hearing some people say that Alan Wake 2 is like the video game version of an A24 movie, and I feel like that comparison is apt because A24 movies are incredible works of art, but for some people, they can kind of be a slog, and at times Alan Wake 2 felt like a little bit of a slog to me. I thought the writing was super creative, but the gameplay kind of left me dry at a couple points. At times I kind of felt like it was more of a detective horror game with occasional survival moments than a real survival horror game. I don't know. To some people, I'm sure that you're gonna tell me that I'm talking out of my ass or something like that, but just for me, something felt off. I still greatly enjoyed the game, but I just kind of feel like I look at it as a better work of art than a game. Like, it's a game I feel like I can respect and appreciate more than I can enjoy, because I respect and enjoy the artistry of it, but I'm a little mixed on the gameplay by comparison. It still is very good, and I'm very happy that Sam Lake stuck to his vision for the game come hell or high water, because that guy has got a crazy mind. I don't know, maybe now that the New Game Plus mode's out, a replay of it on New Game Plus will open something up about it for me. All in all, I'm happy that it finally made its way out, especially as someone who loved the first game so much. I just kind of wish I loved this one a little bit more, but all in all, as a work of art, I think it's fantastic. And if nothing else, I at least recommend watching a walkthrough of it online. If nothing else, I think that you should experience the story of the game, because writing-wise, it's very clever. So hopefully that's enough of a recommendation. On a much lighter gameplay note, I've loved the WarioWare series for a very long time, and WarioWare Smooth Moves on the Wii is one of my favorite games in the series. So as soon as I heard that WarioWare Move It was coming along and that it was basically a sequel to Smooth Moves, I was very happy. That was a very welcome surprise. And I was glad to know that even after the huge switch up that was WarioWare Get It Together, that there would still be room for traditional WarioWare games such as this. And yeah, this one was great. The micro games are as fun as ever, and there's still more than enough of that trademark goofy humor and absurdist charm at play here in this game. I do think the Joy-Cons are a bit of a finicky peripheral, and they can be more finicky than the Wii Remote even if they afford you a greater amount of motion. And there are some forms in the game that feel a little weird here and there, but otherwise it's a plenty fun game that I'd highly recommend as a great party game for gamers of all ages. Who could have predicted that in 2023 we'd get a sequel to Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl? I knew it! Even as someone who enjoyed Nick All-Star Brawl 1 more than probably most others did, I couldn't have predicted that I'd love Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 as much as I did. Hot take that I can't believe I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it. In a year with Street Fighter 6 and Mortal Kombat 1, Nick All-Star Brawl 2 was my favorite fighting game of the year, and I couldn't believe that I ended up saying that. This game is much more feature-packed than the first, with way more polish, and mechanically it's so much better. Way less spammy, and it feels like I can be a lot more creative with my combos here, which is really nice. And I'm happy that Ludosity actually got to let this one cook a little bit, and I feel like the jump from NASB 1 to NASB 2 is somewhat comparable, not fully, but somewhat comparable to the jump between Super Smash Bros. 64 and Super Smash Bros. Melee. Again, not as extreme of a jump, but relatively speaking, it's kind of in that ballpark. I'm happy to see that the series is really coming into its own with this one, and it's already gotten a lot of longevity out of me, and I think it's going to continue to get longevity out of me. And then last for the honorable mentions, I could have never expected that Nintendo would have brought Super Mario RPG back, but I'm more than happy that they did, especially as someone who never got to play Super Mario RPG the first time around. So this remake was my first experience with the game, and it was fantastic. It really scratched my itch for a game akin to the classic Paper Mario titles, which isn't surprising given that the original Super Mario RPG kind of laid the groundwork for what Paper Mario would do. And it's great to see that they added new content to the game and new features and things like that, while also staying faithful to the original game in this remake. It may have taken 27 years, but it is very nice to see Nintendo bring this back in such a wonderful way. It makes me excited, even more excited I would say, because I love this game so much, that Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door is going to be getting a remake next year. And being that this was the final first-party game that Nintendo released in 2023, what a great end to an incredible year for the publisher. One that I'm not even done talking about yet. Because now it's time for the best of the best. The games that I gave a 10 out of 10 to, my absolute favorites of the year. Are you falling asleep on me? Ah! Sorry, I just wanted to make sure you were awake. So these are my personal favorite games of the year. So let's get into the best of the best, but actually guess what? There's one more honorable mention. Because this is a game that I did give a 10 out of 10 to, but I didn't put it on the proper list, so to speak, because it was a remaster. Like a remake, I'll put on the list. A remaster, not really. But I want to mention it, and it probably won't be a surprise. It might be hard to notice, but you can see I'm wearing a Samus Aran shirt. You can probably tell I'm a Metroid fan. It would be silly of me to go through this entire video and not bring up Metroid Prime Remastered. Nintendo really took one of my all-time favorite video games and somehow managed to make it better. I mean, Retro certainly took its sweet time to give us this game. It's been 9 years since their last game, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, was released, but the wait for this was worth it. The graphical overhaul, which I didn't even feel like it necessarily needed because the original looks so great, is phenomenal, and it feels really good to play this game with twin-stick controls. I honestly didn't think the Wii Remote controls could be topped because I really enjoyed those in the Metroid Prime trilogy, but they have been. And honestly, this is how you make a classic even better. I really hope the sequels end up getting released on the Switch soon, but for now, damn, this is so worth it. I was giddy when I played this at first because I'm just so excited that it even exists, and it's really awesome. And hey, maybe the fact that this re-release exists means we may be closer than ever to a certain title we've been waiting way too long for. Bring on Metroid Prime 4! I sure hope we get to hear about it sooner rather than later. But okay, now we're on to the proper list. These are the 5 games that I gave a 10 out of 10 to, ranked as a top 5, of course. Let's jump in, because we've gotten through enough honorable mentions already. Coming in at number 5, I gotta go with the Dead Space remake. I don't know how, but when I first played Dead Space, I couldn't really get into it. There was probably something I just wasn't getting about it, but I was just kind of like bored or something. I don't even know why or how. But it appears that a full-blown remake was exactly what the doctor ordered for me to get into the game because it is fantastic. Genuinely playing it in its newly redone form blew me away. I actually played it twice this year, and I thoroughly enjoyed both playthroughs. I was able to really appreciate the tension and fear that the game provided while also appreciating its excellent action gameplay. It kind of gave me vibes akin to what I experienced when I first played the Resident Evil 2 remake, and I caught a lot of similarities between the two that I really appreciated. Motive Studios really become another EA developer that I'm very impressed with, and I'm excited to see what they do with their upcoming Iron Man game, though I hope EA allows them to continue with the Dead Space IP, either with another remake or a wholly new game. I know that fans waited a long time for this IP to even come back, and I hope that EA continues to give it the love it deserves, especially after this game, because this was truly fantastic, and I'm definitely excited to see where the franchise goes from here. At number 4, one of the biggest surprises of the year, I definitely gotta go with Hi-Fi Rush. It's crazy to think that we even got here to this, and that I'm actually able to talk about this in this video. Tango Gameworks is a developer that built up a legacy with horror games like The Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo, the former of which didn't really win me over in my short time with it, and the latter of which I thought was just fine. But Hi-Fi Rush was just a total 180 for them. A rhythm action game designed in the style of a Saturday morning cartoon developed by the horror game team. Honestly, who would have thought? Like, who could have seen this coming ever? But honestly, I'm glad that whoever it was, whether it was Xbox or Bethesda, I'm glad they let Tango cook, because this game is absolutely brilliant. It's pure, it's lovely, it's fun, the concept is great, it's very well realized, the gameplay is incredibly compelling, the visual style is unbelievable, and there's just such a huge effervescent amount of charm to this game. It honestly feels pure and magical, I'd even say, showcasing some of the most confidence I've seen yet out of Tango Gameworks. I constantly hear Xbox's Phil Spencer throw around the word creative or creativity very often, and sometimes I don't feel it as much with the company's other developers, but with Hi-Fi Rush, I absolutely get it. It's great that Xbox and Bethesda let a game like this exist, and I hope it inspires other developers and publishers that are of the AAA size and scale to understand and realize that you don't need to throw exorbitant budgets and flashy production values to make a game great. A AA game, if you will, can be just as great, and Hi-Fi Rush is a perfect example. I think this game is really special, and I absolutely highly recommend it. At number 3, a game I'm sure will top more than a few Game of the Year lists. Might not have been my top, but still a fantastic game in and of itself. Definitely gotta go with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I have no idea how, but they did it. Against all odds, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, to me, actually managed to outdo Breath of the Wild. I honestly can't believe it either. It takes everything that made the first game so successful but adds so much to the overall gameplay. The sheer depth of creativity it offers you in pretty much every facet is something I was so consistently wowed by. The way I was able to more creatively solve puzzles this time around compared to any other Zelda game just left me in total awe the entire time. I honestly find it a bit hard to get into some longer games, but even for this game taking me as long as it did, something north of 40 hours according to my Switch, it was worth it. Honestly, just what an incredible journey, and yet another showing of why this franchise is seen as one of the best, if not the best, in gaming. I mean, they call it Legend of Zelda for a reason. This game is pretty legendary. I think that Nintendo did an incredible, unbelievable job with this game, and I'm very happy after the long wait that it turned out so awesome. But despite the hype for it, there were actually 2 games I enjoyed more than Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The next one, our number 2, being another game from Nintendo. Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Man, being a Nintendo fan in 2023 has been like having all your favorite holidays on one day. So many amazing new games, some fantastic re-releases as well, and honestly, between all of it, to me, Mario Wonder is probably the best of the bunch. What an absolute treat of a video game right here. Just like an utter haven of creativity that was constantly blowing my mind. With every level, I was constantly asking myself, what the hell are they gonna do next? And then they do something completely wild that once again blew my mind. Some of the most inventive and creative level design that I've seen in any Mario game, which says a lot because Mario games have incredible level design. Excellent platforming gameplay, it's accessible while still being challenging, and it's just an absolute joyride. To me, this is, I think, the closest that Nintendo's gotten to topping Super Mario World since, well, Super Mario World. I don't know if I'd put it above Super Mario World because that game is just too good. It's like legendary, absolutely incredible, one of my favorite games. But the fact that it comes so close is truly remarkable. This is a phenomenal game that I can't recommend highly enough. Don't brush it off just because it's a 2D game. Don't think to yourself, oh, it's just another new Super Mario Bros. Game. No, this is even better than the new Super Mario Bros. Games, and I very highly recommend it. And finally, my number 1 favorite game of the year, my personal pick for game of the year. It might have gotten snubbed at the Game Awards, but I'm used to my favorite games of a given year being snubbed by the Game Awards. Spider-Man 2. I know some people might have found it to be a bit of a safe sequel compared to some other sequels that have come out this year and compared to the previous game, but personally, I just love the Spider-Man games, and as someone who considers Spider-Man his favorite superhero, Spider-Man 2 is everything I could have wanted out of a proper sequel to Insomniac's previous game. From both a gameplay and a narrative perspective, this had me from the jump and just never let go. It was gripping to play with some smart improvements and variety to the combat and traversal compared to the first game, and to the standalone expansion, Spider-Man Miles Morales. And I think the story is extremely well written with plenty of emotional moments as well. Having grown up with Insomniac Games as a developer, I've been playing their games since the original Spyro games, I'm really happy to see what they've done over the last 2 gaming generations, especially. And as a huge Spider-Man fan, it's just been incredible to see that not only have they done such a fantastic job crafting a game that plays incredibly well, but that they've shown so much respect to the web-slinger's lore and the IP of Spider-Man as a whole. Insomniac to me is truly one of the best developers in the game today, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what they do next with Wolverine. This was a game that had me smiling from ear to ear the whole entire time I played it. It's definitely one of my favorite games. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Insomniac did an unreal job with it, and I can't recommend it highly enough. I do understand that for some people it might seem like a safe sequel, and I do think that's a valid perspective, but for me, it was everything I could have wanted and then some. I'm very happy with how it turned out. Spider-Man 2 is my game of the year for 2023. So yeah, what a year. A lot of amazing video games this year, and I was very happy about that because, as I have alluded to a couple times, this year has been all over the place for me, personally, mentally, things like that. It has been absolutely nuts. But video games have been fantastic this year. As someone who obviously has loved video games since I was a kid, video games have given me a chance to escape, and I'm happy that they've continued to be here as I've grown into an adult. And I'm happy that I get to write about them as well, that I have a job writing about video games, and that I get to make content for this channel about video games. And at least as far as new releases, this has been one of the most fun years to follow as far as games. I don't know how 2024 can top it, but I know there's going to be some fantastic titles, and I can't wait to see what's in store. And I truly hope 2024 ends up being a better year for game developers, because the sheer amount of layoffs that have been happening over this past year, it's kind of ridiculous. And it really puts a damper on what's been a fantastic time to be a gamer. Hopefully that's something that can work itself out. But again, at risk of an awkward transition, these were all my opinions on games that I played and loved throughout this year. What are some games that you played and that you loved throughout this year? Whether they be games I mentioned or games that I didn't mention, what were some of your favorites? Whatever your thoughts and opinions are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And my next long form video, it's probably not going to come right away. There's probably going to be a little bit of a wait between this video and that, but I'm going to be jumping back into music and talking about some albums that I didn't review in 2023, because every year there are some albums that I listen to that I don't get to review, and it turns out this year there were quite a few, including some albums that will end up on my year-end list. Some of my favorite albums this year I didn't get to review for one reason or another. Again, life is hectic. So I want to do a quick video shining a spotlight on some of those albums and giving some opinions so you guys at least know what I thought of them when you inevitably see them on my year-end lists. So stay tuned for that, but until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.